Episode 31, Mere Mortals Top Podcasts with a nice, big, solid table. Kyrin down. Welcome to the new world. And
the big table. That's what makes a difference, man.
So let's just start by having a quick chat about this table. This table you see, have a look at it in the video if you can check it out. It is at least 100 kilos or 80 kilos, I reckon.
It's a fat table.
And
we're on the second story.
Yep. Of this new place.
Second story? First story?
Yeah, first story. And it was a bit of a pain to get up here, but it's now in here. It's a full podcast setup. Let's get into it. So, Mere Mortals Top Podcasts. I think we were talking about what the next episode was going to be. I thought, let's just recap a couple of things that we find engaging. A couple of the podcasts we've already been listening to.
Yep.
I have a bit of a list.
Share some knowledge amongst ourselves.
I don't think we're going to overlap. I don't believe I know we listen to a lot of podcasts, but I think we've got a bit of a different taste when it comes to the podcast and where we sometimes listen to them.
Yep.
And I've also got, I guess, my top 3 episodes for each of those ones. Some of these ones have 600, 700 episodes. So it's a little bit obtuse to tell people to go and listen to a particular podcast and they've got 700 episodes to sift through. So
definitely
got that as well.
First of all, though, Mere Mortal moment.
All right, you can get started. Tell me.
All right, so I had 2, and I want to start doing it so that I sort of touch on something from the last week's discussion topic. So I was finding, like, if you probe deep enough, everyone will believe something that's against the grain. Now, that's not necessarily a conspiracy theory, which I think you had wrong last time. I think you do need people conspiring, and it's not just
I got messages from people agreeing with me.
They
did. I'm telling you.
Yeah, absolutely did not. But I definitely think it is like if you do probe deep enough, everyone has something which I guess goes against conventional wisdom.
Yep.
Whether that's related to conspiracy theories or not. So it's just, I suppose, helpful keeping that in mind where you think, someone's super logical, super rational, whatever. But even they would have stuff which the vast majority of people would be like, nah, man.
No, yeah.
So that's one of them. The other one was, it's interesting, I suppose, like speaking about something, it's almost like it somehow manifests itself in reality. So I rarely talk about conspiracy theories in day-to-day life with people. Like, it just doesn't come up very often. And I had like a friend came over last night checking out the new place. And we just had a discussion that got onto it and deep into it really, really quickly.
Conspiracy theories.
So and that happened like when we were talking about dreaming, and that's when I got my first lucid dream, and that's happened other times in my life where it's almost like bringing something from the subconscious
into reality.
Yeah, sure. Make it into reality.
Very easy.
What about you, man?
Whew, this door's open. I can hear some noise outside, so I will speak over it. Nah, my one was to achieve great things, 2 things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time.
Yeah,
which is an interesting one. So I was finding that I was lacking slightly. I've got my yearly goals, I've got my monthly goals, but I was finding that day to day I'm starting to lose, especially last week. I wasn't really focusing on the day to day. I think oftentimes I was looking at doing some of the goals, and then we were doing a lot of moving into this new place. I was doing a lot of other stuff, and it sort of got away from me, the day to day things that I should be focusing on. So looking at a plan and not quite enough time. I had the quite not enough time section of it, but I didn't really have the day-to-day plan. So I was like, okay, mere mortal moment, didn't really plan it enough out. You really be taking actions to sort of build up to the monthly and yearly ones.
So what were some of the things you missed?
Oh, well, I'll just close the door.
Good.
No, well, some of the things that I missed are looking back at some of the particular things I wanted to do for the month, which was investigate a couple of the particular shares and learn a little bit more about cooking. I found that I was thinking about it and I was like, oh yeah, that's something I've got to do. But day to day, I wasn't putting those actions, and instead I was, doing the normal work or focusing on other things where it's things I want to do. But again, it's not the priority things I listed out specifically for the month.
Yeah.
So it was, just need to recalibrate the things that I'm doing and put a bit more emphasis on the planning. So going to be doing a bit more daily check-ins, especially in a written form.
Yeah.
A lot of my stuff is online based now, or at least like sort of spreadsheets. And I think while it's fine and it keeps a track really easily, you kind of lose a touch of writing something and a tacit, understanding of you write it and then you're like, okay, I'm a little bit more based on the fact that I wrote this, I'm going to do it, or I'm a bit more confrontational about my goals, and that I should be doing them.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, interesting. Good. Well, good you realized it, and
Yep.
hopefully taking some steps to fix it.
No, I will do. Now, top podcasts. I try to generalize, I guess, when I listen to some of the top podcasts. So I've got 5 top podcasts.
I'm going to stop you right there, man.
Oh,
It's actually quite easy to think something is a podcast when it's not. And I had a bunch of them, which I thought I just chucked under the category of podcasts.
Okay, all right.
Because where I listen to podcasts, I also listen to other things or watched other things from there. And so for me, I just use YouTube because I find I get like the least amount of ads there, and I don't want to go searching on other platforms to find places. And some people do less ads on certain podcasts on YouTube, for example.
Right,
so I know Joe Rogan cuts in. I haven't checked it, but recently, but he used to have all his ads on his audio and
podcast and moved them out from the YouTube one. Oh, okay,
interesting. Have any of that.
Didn't know that.
So that's just one of the things I'd say is like, so a podcast, it says it should be audio only. A lot of websites were defining it as audio
Actually, I wouldn't agree with that. And we didn't,
now,
I guess, okay,
now
sorry.
it's more video and audio.
We didn't have the definition piece of this, but you're right. I think from a podcast perspective, majority of mine actually are mainly audio, but there is one that I know is audio and video, just like what we do as well. So I think podcast here can be termed just in terms of sharing a content or story through a medium, right? So not the traditional mediums of, I guess, TV show or radio. This is more of a digital means of, proposing stories or information or whatnot.
Yeah.
Happy for it to be videos or a podcast.
It can get into weird stuff as well, because there's people who, I'm pretty sure I saw one which was called 10-second podcast, and it was a dude who'd just do something for 10 seconds, and he called it 10-second podcast. And so it's
what was it? We just him doing like,
well,
saying,
like it'd be like him outdoors and just like a real short snippet of him saying something.
And that was a podcast. Yeah.
So I guess it is. It's also entertainment. It's also So I think it's like the general definition is a audio or video medium that you can use through the internet. It's got to be through the internet. Okay. So if it's on TV, it's not a podcast.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't think the 10-second podcast made it into my top 5. Unfortunately, haven't heard of that. Won't be recomming it to anybody.
You could bust out episodes with that as well.
Imagine that. I'm up to episode 20,000. Very good. So I'm thinking, let's just go one by one. I'll say one, you say one. We'll see if we pick up similar ones.
Yeah. Just
to generalize it, give people a bit of an insight. I think my type of podcast are more focused on business, general life, self-improvement, and life testing is what I termed it. So where there's podcasts where they talk about individuals who are a little bit more broad-based and they themselves might be real expert in that niche, but I'll be listening to quite a variety of things across everything.
Yep.
Generally broad. It's not specifically locked into one thing apart from one of mine, which is still a little bit broad. So I'm not just listening to news media that's specifically from Oklahoma talking about pigs. Like I'm not listening about that. I'm not
how to restore 1948.
It's nothing about. I know the biggest trends at the moment from a podcast perspective is true crime. I've never listened to a true crime podcast in my life. And you could probably get yourself into a niche around that. So it's much more business, general life, and life learnings, I guess. So, which I guess that makes the a lot of the basis for the stuff of how we podcast and what we talk about.
Yep.
Yeah. What about? Did you have a bit of a general take on what your podcasts were like?
So I've listed like 4, which I quite regularly listen to. Ranges, man. It goes from like entertainment and humor, sort of meaning and understanding, knowledge and critical thinking, new ideas, out of the box thinking. Sort of a bit of everything.
Sure. So I guess everybody listening, these particular ones are going to be general knowledge, entertainment, specific. They're not going to be true crime.
A topic.
Yeah, exactly. I'll kick us off.
Do it.
One on my list, the Tim Ferriss Show. Now, I love this dude. I've written a couple of descriptions for each one, taken obviously from the internet and a little bit of sort of what I know about them. So if you don't know him, he's self-describes himself as a human guinea pig. That is his little outline on Spotify as well, or his podcast is a human guinea pig. You might know him from the 4-Hour Work Week sort of book that he...
Yeah, most
popular. 2006, made him really popular. A few other books. He's a big angel investor in San Francisco. So in his show, he actually deconstructs world-class performers from eclectic areas. So he's got investing, pro chess players, pro sports, mountain climbing. He's interviewed Schwarzenegger. Not on my top list, but it's like super hard to interview people like that, like Schwarzenegger. Like he barely makes any interviews. So
yeah,
he digs deep. He digs really deep into finding stories, and probably one of the best interviewers I reckon I've heard out there. That's not like a TB-based interview or the like. So he's quite good. I don't know if he features in your list at all. I know you started listening a little bit to him, but... Yeah,
a little bit. I find just with him is it's interesting, but one of the things that I don't feel he goes super deep.
No.
A lot of times.
It's much more... It's a conversational... They're normally hour to 3 hour long podcasts that are much more conversational. Almost like if you bumped into Schwarzenegger or Tony Robbins and started having a bit of a discussion. How's your day? What are you up to? You know, that's kind of more the vibe that I get from it. Not like a... Tell me a secret, tell me a top 5 things, summarize it, what's the best thing. They get it. Yeah, it's a bit jokey. Yeah. So it's half entertainment, half, getting a little bit into niche.
One of the things I've noticed just while listening to it, I wouldn't get much benefit from it from listening like back to back episodes. I sort of like dip in, see what is going on, like if he's speaking with someone interesting.
Yeah.
But I suppose because he asks, the same questions basically every time.
Yeah.
Or if you had a billboard, what would you put up on it? Blah blah blah. If you,
he's got some tried and tested ways that he would mention things.
And it's good in a way because you get to see similarities between successful people or people in they're notable for whatever reason. Like he's not grabbing randoms off the street, and that's interesting. But yeah, for me, I just can't watch too many episodes at once. Like it's not one of those ones where I just go bang.
Look, I agree. And I'm not like religiously following every single episode either. I've noted that, like I started from the very beginning moving through and I'll skip maybe 1 or 2 here and there that I'm not totally interested in the way that, or what particular topic it is. He does mention though that he creates episodes that are really broad ranging. So he's not particularly targeting one area. He might be talking to Jane Goodall. He'll then go and talk to an astronaut, then a chess player. Like it'll be very varied.
Yeah.
So you're not particularly listening to every episode. It'll be maybe every week, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. You'll be like, okay, he's got a good one that'll come out. So they're good that way. So a couple of really notable ones that I would tell people definitely go listen. Some of the earlier ones, he's got a double 2-parter with Tony Robbins, number 36 and 37. On his morning routines, how he acts, everything in between. I think they really got deep into Tony Robbins' morning routine, which was awesome. And it's pretty crazy sort of stuff that you get the insight into Tony, where I believe he wakes up, as soon as he wakes up, he gets massaged by his personal trainer. So obviously with coronavirus and whatever, who knows now. But at the particular time, this was in 2015, he would wake up, his personal trainer would massage his joints and bones to make sure they were like perfectly aligned. He'd get 2 blood tests, 2 checks straight away to see where he was up to, and he would get a customized shake based on how he was feeling and how his hormones were in the day. Then he'd go outside, do into his dip tank, and then get into a bit of training. And that was his like morning routine straight away, quite like methodological. But it was kind of a combination of Tim also having experienced a lot of those things as well. And so they got into this really deep discussion about what makes Tony tick. And he's, doing sometimes 10, 12, 14 hour speaking sessions. And at the end of the day, he's done something like 20, 30 kilometers of just walking around and exercising. So it was really interesting. I tell people to check that one out. Really good. Quite an older episode right now, 5 years now. So 6 years, 4 years. So still good. Number 107 is with the scariest Navy SEAL he's ever met, which is Jocko Willink. This is pre-Jocko having a podcast. And it is one of the aspects that made Jocko actually start his own podcast. So if you don't know who Jocko is, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you do know him, if you don't know him, he's just a really badass Navy SEAL that believes in extreme ownership. Listen to his TED Talk if you want to get something really quick from him. But yeah, that particular episode was really good because you kind of see Jocko as he was before even starting a podcast, and he's just legit. He is just no holding back, just telling him like what I do, what he does. Tim trying to tell him about his training, and Jocko just like laughing at him and making fun. It's a funny, entertaining episode.
Funny, yeah.
But you pick up a lot of the stuff that Jocko eventually came out with. So he was already talking about like ownership, cover and move tactics that he brought over from the Navy SEALs into business. He'd already started Echo Front, his business company essentially. He'd already sort of started that EF Online and all those. And number 148, it's with Josh Waitzkin. So it's a second discussion with Josh. Josh it's called Josh Waitzkin, The Prodigy Returns. Again, it's pretty funny. He's the basis for, I don't know if you know the book and movie Search Bobby Fischer.
No, I've read another book of his, but I haven't actually seen
that particular book or movie is based on him, on Josh Waitzkin. So he's a chess prodigy who essentially moved into helping out hedge fund billionaires and investing sort of moguls to make decisions using sort of tactics that he learned in sort of chess. So really entertaining. Gets into really deep into some of the financials as well as sort of his mindset and how he interacts with problems and issues. So number 148. Tim Ferriss, also a really good one. Now, I'll make a note. I'm only up to episode 150 of Tim Ferriss, and he's up to 421 or 22 today. So that's only a third of Tim Ferriss I've listened to so far. Yeah. Perhaps there's better ones out there, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, interesting.
That's Tim Ferriss.
So if you find a new podcast that you like, do you go back to the very start and sort of work your way through chronologically, or do you do?
Yes.
Okay, because I started some of his, and it's like, I'd rather start at the front.
Well, I've done a bit of a weird thing. I started from all the way chronologically so I can see the progress and everything else. But specifically around the coronavirus, he was getting a lot of really good podcasts out. So I started listening to them for a little bit, and now I flipped back to chronologically.
Okay, interesting.
All right, hit me with one.
So there's...
hit me the one that we all know is going to be told by Kyrin.
Probably a common one is Sam Harris. And...
I don't think that's common. No? I don't think it's very common. I reckon...
No. Between you and
I don't have it on here either. I don't have it on here.
Whatever. How many have you listened to?
I've got heaps. I've got many... Oh, Sam Harris. Yeah. I've listened to almost every episode. But it is not a favorite. But it's not a top podcast.
Okay. All right. Gotcha,
give me your reasoning.
I just really like his way of thinking. He was probably one of the first people I met in the sense that you can get to know someone online.
Online, yep.
Where... you see his thinking and you're like, oh, okay, like I can appreciate the like logicalness of it. Like you can see he's really consistent. He very rarely deviates from being like this consistent guy when he's interviewing. Yeah. And he goes deep on subjects. So he doesn't sort of like fiddle around with like, oh, what's your day? How the superficial stuff, I guess, in some sense. He goes like deep into the topic, which I really, really enjoyed.
Cool. And
just introduced me to one of the things I really liked about this was it gave me a lot of book ideas that I want to read more. And so I created a huge list based of all of his podcasts, and he's only 190, maybe getting close to 200 now.
He's 198.
Yeah. So I probably got like a good 50 books. 40 to 50 books.
And I'll mention something to people. One of the things I actually really enjoy about podcasts is, and to learn a lot more, is listening to like some of these podcasts that we're talking about, listening to the people that they talk to and the interview, and that's all good and you get a little bit of a snippet. But then it's, as you say, normally it's through a book or something else that the other person has written, and then that's when you can go a lot deeper on a particular topic that you enjoy. So the Sam Harris one where you're talking about, I think I've done this where he's interviewed a lot of people. I think with Scale, it would have been the one. So that prompted the further reading into much more deeper topics. And I think that's a really good way to use podcasts. Use them as your like initial sort of venture into a particular niche or depth, and then going much further beyond if you're actually interested in learning, but not using podcasts to learn in that deep sense, using books or tutorials or classes to actually do that.
Yeah, definitely. Hit me up. What's your next?
I wanted some episodes. You don't have any episodes?
I didn't say... No, for him, I didn't think there was any that really, really stood out for me.
Okay.
Can't think of any that are like brilliant, but
I'll tell you
I enjoyed a lot of them.
Okay. I'll tell you an entertaining one. The one where he interviews his wife.
Oof.
That is the weirdest episode of Sam Harris that I've ever noted. So
that one's good if you've seen almost all of his others, so you get an idea of what he's like as a person.
Yeah.
outside of that very familial context.
Yeah,
and then seeing
it's
that,
interesting.
it's
It's interesting. I mean, it's not a plug or anything, but Sam Harris, if you do listen to him on most platforms, it's cut down. You would have to purchase, extra if you want to listen to it fully.
Is it
but
now? Like
it is. You have to purchase, but
even his older ones.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay. Interesting.
he did say for some reason you can't pay for it. You just send them an email and they give it to you for free.
Yeah,
So-
he's really cool with that. Yeah.
All right, my follow-up one, Property Couch. Now, this is my only one that's a little bit more niche than anything, right? So they describe themselves as the insider guide to property finance and money management. So it's by Bryce Holdaway and Ben Kingsley. I think it's one of the guys, he was on Location. The other one's been like a property manager, property realtor for quite a lot of years, like 20, 30 years.
Yep.
It's all financials. There is a focus on property. Obviously, it's called the Property Couch. But they do talk a little bit more broadly as well on sometimes shares, just global economy, local economy as well. So it's a bit of finance, economics, and a lot of property. Now, I like it because they go quite in depth with some particular things, not into a real deep economical, quarter one, it's 2.3%, and this is going to happen. And this is, sometimes they mention that, but they're not all about that. And they're pretty sort of jovial in the discussions, a bit of fun. They talk about AFL and footy at the beginning, then they get into the particular topic at hand. They're not everlasting episodes though, or a lot of them are not, because they're very, occurrence based. So currently they're putting out a lot about the coronavirus, how it affects rentals in Queensland, how it affects rentals overall, how it affects this bill, that sort of stuff. You can't really go back and re-listen to some of those things. Like, you're not going to learn anything new from a particular topic. So they're more like current news as opposed to anything else. But they've got some particular ones which are pretty good. So call them out. Some of the early ones. There's a two-parter, 153 and 154. They're up to about coming up to 300, I think. There's a two-parter on the do's and the don'ts. So it's all based around the discoveries that they've learned in property. So those guys have got plenty of years between them about it, and they talked a lot about what are the things that you should be doing and you shouldn't be doing. So I think that was probably one of the first places I really listened to talking about should you buy off the property, or if you should buy a brand new property or existing property, and why it's important to have existing statistics and rentals rather than no information. They're big on making 150, 200, 250 really special ones. So number 200, they talk to Paul Clitheroe, if you know who that is.
No.
He's a fairly old dude, so sort of timeless wisdom. He built a property portfolio. He founded a company called IPAC, which is sort of like a it's like a investment fund / property sort of company. I didn't really look too much into it, but it manages around $12 billion. So he's a big guy explaining a lot of key sort of both basic and more advanced information about someone who's Australian and really big in the property market. And then number 275 would be my other recommendation if you want to get into it, which is is really recent, 7 Grades of Financial Wellbeing. So it was a really interesting discussion because they went from what the lowest level in terms of poverty would be explained as, all the way to the highest level in terms of money management. So the lowest level would be essentially not even living paycheck to paycheck. You've got no way of moving forward. You're pretty much at the slums, at the bottom levels. But they sort of explain, okay, what actions did you take to get to that level? And what actions do you have to exhibit from a money management perspective to get out of it? And so they went each level up, sort of explaining, okay, if you're going to go between a level where I think level 4 was comfortable to a level 5 where it's you're comfortable and able to utilize money. There's particular things you have to take on, so behaviors and practices that you have to do with your money management. And if you don't do them, you cannot get to that next level. And then also explains, okay, if you're already at level 5, if you start doing this and this and this, that's where you're actually going to go back down to a level 4 over a long period of time.
So they split into, say 0 to 10,000, 10,000.
No, so they don't put
30,000.
an income or anything. What they've talked about, it's more based on the levels go up by money management, and each level is pertained by the behavior, your overall socioeconomic status, what you can do with your money or you can't do with your money. So the highest level, it's essentially so level 6 I think was intergenerational wealth, and level 7 was beyond just your generation. So it was like multiple level generations wealth, where you've taken care of your wealth and you've already set up plans that's, taking care of your next level of wealth and the level beyond that. Okay. So there's like, strategies in place so that, they talk about property, if you've set up a massive complex of 100 units, and you've paid down the debt ratio to like, 20%, then you've set yourself up for your kids to be able to take that on and be able to service it quite well and continue with it, but be able to withstand time and go even beyond that. So, you're going to generationally set people quite well. So that was a really good podcast. It was a massively long podcast. I didn't realize it was going to be so long, but quite good. They get so, and they've got like they talk to a lot of people behind that one, and it's pre-coronavirus, so it's not really influenced by what might be happening right now. So just keep that in mind. So Property Couch, definitely recommend. Good guys.
Cool. I've already mentioned Joe Rogan, I think.
No, you haven't. Well, you talked about it earlier, but
that's what I mean. Mm-hmm. So he's, I guess, one of the main podcasters you'll hear nowadays, at least.
Yep.
And this episode might date pretty terribly because who knows how long some of these people are going to be around for. However, I've really enjoyed, I suppose, looking at him and why he is the top.
Yep.
And at first I didn't really understand it because he was, it was sort of like entertainment, but it was very niche. For me, it felt niche, his style of humor and whatnot. But the more I saw, like the more different types of guests he gets on. So he'd get famous actors and singers and whatnot, but then like his friends, just absolutely random people, and then he'd not steal guests, but change guests as well. Sort of like if someone's on Tim Ferriss's Jocko,
then bring him over,
and whatnot. So some of the really good ones from that, he introduced me to Theo Von, if you've heard of him. Episode 925. And so if you look at Joe Rogan, he's up to 1,200 and something now. And
he's also got another podcast out now, which is specifically MMA.
Oh, I guess. Yeah. And so he's way beyond that. He's at 1,400 now. Holy crap. So like all the earlier ones, a lot of the earlier ones are pretty trash, and you look back at him and he's been doing it for 10 plus years now. Those early ones are like, I suppose, like 500 and before. A lot of them are kind of crap.
Rough. Okay. Interesting.
So my favorite ones are all beyond that, but Theo Von, the first one I saw him on was just like, does this person actually exist? Like, what the hell? Same with, as far as like entertainment value, 911 and 1255, both of those with Alex Jones, which are just absolutely insane. If you don't know who Alex Jones is, I'll let you look him up himself. And one recent as well, the 1436 with Adam Curry. And
we mentioned this.
One of the things I really liked about that one was he was just a guy who had like a very obvious, I suppose, like a facial defect or something. Like he sort of twitch. I can't remember
like a tick or something.
Yeah, the medical term for what exactly he has. But he's like super successful in a bunch of different ways. Like he started off as an MTV producer. He's called sort of the Podfather because he's one of the dudes who first invented podcasts. He, so did like a sort of podcast radio show. Invested in Vimeo. He had his own company, and he became basically, I think Ask Jeeves. It was something to do with Ask Jeeves. Just got a lot of money from that. Decided to buy a castle in like Belgium, and he's grew up in the Netherlands, I think. So just really cool, interesting guy. So that was one of the podcasts. I was just like, that's awesome.
I still haven't gone into Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know if I will now. I feel like I'm so far behind, and I'm a person that I want to go chronologically.
No, no.
Like 1400, not now. I'll finish like 20 years later. So I might pick and choose a couple of them, like the one with, I know I've heard the one with Elon Musk was actually quite good. Maybe something like that to listen to. Next up for me, The Art of Manliness. Now don't be fooled by the name. It began originally, and I haven't watched many of the original ones, but it began much more like guy orientated. The very latest ones now, though, like from the last 200 episodes, they're much broader. Still, it's called The Art of Manliness. So it's intelligent conversations, life-improving insights, actionable advice without the fluff. So that's pretty cool. Just really general, interesting discussions. It's very normally he brings on individuals who have written a book. So it's really easy to be like, if you want to go and read a book, you just go find that person that he's talking to. I think I've read 4 or 5 books now directly from listening to that particular podcast and going and searching them out. The recent one that I'm listening to with the sailing one, the 10 learning leadership from life at sea or something from 10 admirals. That was from him discussing with the guy who wrote that book in terms of leadership qualities and that. So they talked a little bit about the book, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to go and get the book as well. So cool. A couple of ones we got to go reverse order this time. Number 591's solve problems before they become problems. So you talk to Dan Heath with a book about upstream. So the quest to solve problems before they happen. There's a really interesting discussion. A little bit because I know some of these things around, okay, you don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive with a lot of things. They got really stuck into the actual cycle of reaction. So with a lot of things, it's always going to be cycles. They talked about how if you're in a reactive state, you essentially, because you're in a reactive state, you're going to be more likely to be in a reactive state. So they talked about if something will happen, you react to it. While you're fixing it, something will happen, so you'll react to it. And they got quite deep into it. Okay,
so the chain of
So you talked so it talked a little about solving problems before they become problems by focusing on the really important key areas of life, and actually even if there's issues coming out of other places, just kind of letting them happen and focusing on the other ones that are going to be really important, prioritizing them, and make sure you're proactive there while allowing yourself to be reactive in others and being okay with that. So that was a good episode, 591. Number 574, The Power of Bad. This is a cool one. So John Tierney and his book, Power of Bad, how the negativity affects rules us all and how we can rule it. So super, super long discussion, this one. It was about how much stronger bad is than good, which is really interesting. They got into a few discussions around, I think it was 3 to 4 times that bad was better than good. And by that, it was sort of the discussion of, if you said to someone, give me $1 and 25% chance I will give you $3, 75% chance I'll give you nothing. That was sort of like almost the boundary where people were like, no, that's too much of a bad outcome. But if you started going like, oh, no, I'll give you $5, like risk $5 and there's 25% chance that you get it, 75%, that's when people start going, oh, okay, I'll risk it for that sort of level. So a bad outcome, for a good outcome to be better than a bad outcome, it has to be 3 or 4 times better generally. And what he was talking about is just that can also translate into just like everything else. So criticism, if you take bad criticism, you need 3 to 4 times more good feedback to even out what you've discussed. So super awesome. Just the power of bad and how much it also got into the fact of how you can use bad for a good way. So it is more powerful than good, and you can leverage that for other reasons. Now, when I was listening to it, I was kind of like, you could use that in like a channel in a different way. So imagining gym, you do a terrible session, you can harness a lot of that bad energy that you feel that, I'm terrible at it. Next day you go in there and you just brutalize it and you smash out a good session. Where, they were talking about sometimes, if you do something good, the next day you're not as incentivized to do it good again. It's not as strong as doing it bad. So I really enjoyed that.
What's his style? Is it like an interview style? Does he talk about...
Awesome interviewer. Better than Tim Ferriss. Okay. He's probably one of the best interviewers because before he interviews someone, he will read their entire book completely. And so he knows the exact topic and so it's very much just topic based. They're not talking about him as a person. They're talking just about a topic. Yeah. So so he almost kind of talks like chapter by chapter, like, you talked about this. Let's talk about it a little bit more. And then he'll go into it. So you get almost like the book in a really like summarized version of what they're talking about. And then you kind of can dig into the really details by reading the book. But awesome interviewer.
Okay, cool.
And number 294, so a bit of an older one. It's called Learning the Art of Charm. So the guy who's interviewing him has a podcast called The Art of Charm. And look, they just go into things like the gift of gab, how he learned social skills, the myth and downsides of being the life of the party, why small talk is neither unimportant nor a waste of time, and things like his way of thinking was ABG, always be giving. So it was a little bit of like how to be a charming person from a social interaction, relationship perspective in business, and how it sort of always keeps tied in. So if you're improving yourself in the side of networks and relationships, how that can pay off in your discussions in business and so forth. So really cool episode, bit of an older, bit dated, but Art of Charm.
Okay.
Awesome.
Nice.
So that guy has some fantastic
I
episodes.
think I've heard a couple of those. Yeah.
40 minutes to an hour normally. Again, I'd pick up the ones that you find
long,
interesting, but yeah, brilliant. Unfortunately, he's got two sections of ads. One at the beginning that goes for like a minute, and two normally in the middle of a 40-minute podcast. So that can be annoying. I know you would hate that.
I hate ads, man.
But yeah. Anyways.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's good. I might actually check out that one in particular because I have heard the Art of Charm before.
Yeah.
And
$2.94. Awesome.
$2.94. I'll re-listen to this.
Yep. And pick up good.
Yeah. I was thinking like, should we actually put all the notes of these in the in the section of like
we'll put it in the later list actually after the podcast in the description.
Yeah.
We've got this easy, copy them down, you can have a look.
Cool. All right, one that's actually probably influenced me, I guess, the most was Jordan Peterson. And
okay. This is an interesting one because I've never actually gone and found that Jordan Peterson's podcast.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, shit.
I've only ever listened to Jordan Peterson through all the other interviews that he does.
Of him, yeah. Well, see, I suppose that's like one of the ones where he sort of does his podcast that way. So it's almost like a lot of his stuff is like a collaborative thing. So he'll get the audio or whatever from that, and that'll be on his podcast as well, like a group effort. But he did have, and this is one where it's like, I don't know if I can really call this a podcast because some of it's lectures that is just recorded online. Some of it is, I guess like interviews, but on a stage. So it's like people. Sam Harris has done that where it's a podcast episode, whatever, and it's him on a stage with someone in front of something.
And not too bad. They're not too bad, to be honest with you. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but it's like it's sort of like a live performance. It's that's then been taped onto and been called a podcast. So it's like,
is that really a podcast? Yeah.
But I suppose just in general, one of the things I've really gotten from him is a lot of like meaning and understanding, and it was, I guess, just he explained a lot of things which I sort of already knew but didn't particularly know as well, and brought them to light. So yeah, I think like some of my favorites were actually him on other people's podcasts. So him on Joe Rogan's for the first time was an amazing one. I think that was where I got introduced to him on that. And on Jocko's as well. I think that was 112. Yeah, 112.
And also 155.
He's done a couple on them, and I suppose like just in general, what it is about it is very similar to like Sam Harris in like the way he thinks and goes deep and uses a lot of critical thinking. But he has like a lot more emotion into it as well, and I suppose some more deeply.
Sam Harris is a robot compared to Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, for sure. So whether it's a podcast or not, I'm not really sure, but just listening to a lot of his stuff has
Have you got
been
any
very
in particular
beneficial.
you'd call out for people to listen into?
Or
again?
his? No. I'd
maybe the Joe Rogan one.
That one was quite good. Just trying to think if there's none that really jumped to mind. Actually there was one. I didn't write it down. There was one he did with a guy about, it was sort of like the best way of using resources, I guess. A Danish dude, a Norwegian guy, so it'll be like Njord Vlakenbing or something like that.
Yeah, just search that up, just Google it. It'll be fine. You'll find that easy.
And so that was he was on the, I'm just gonna absolutely butcher this. He was on the UN Sustainability Council, I believe. Or something along those lines, and he was trying to discover, I guess, like where's the best way of using resources, and so like they've got $15 billion. What's the best way of spending it to do the most good?
Gotcha.
And so he was sort of like using economic analysis to say like this is what your return is. So it's much better to buy mosquito nets than it is to clean up water sources or something like that. Because like the bang for your buck is
you're gonna get more saved life or whatever. Yeah. Okay. No, interesting.
Yeah. So that one was a highlight for me. I can't remember the actual. I don't even think he uses numbers on his podcast. So it's like
it's hard to even number them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever. I'll write the name down. It'll be in the notes.
Sure. Cool. Next one for me, fourth on the list, but my only podcast which I have listened to religiously, Jocko's podcast. I have listened to every single one of Jocko. Is it on yours? I don't know if it would be. Maybe mine might be.
No, because I haven't listened to it.
If you haven't listened to Jocko's podcast, stop listening to this right now and just go listen to that one. Beats of Man. He's with Echo Charles that he does the discussion. He does have a new one called The Thread and another one which is a bit more, I think it's called The Grounded, which are a little bit about more mixed martial arts. Thread is about his personal life story and other stories. The leaderships and the discussions that he has with people are much more, they're very much inclined to Army, Navy, Air Force sort of discussions, warfare. So if you're not too heavily into that, then perhaps not going to be the best for you. But he has some leadership tips and tricks and things that he's learned, obviously, through 22 years, I think it was, in the Navy. It's Navy SEALs, that gets the Special Forces of the Navy. And, post that, he's got his own company, runs online companies, has his merch. And he is the only person or the only podcast that I know of that makes the advertising sound good. Because if you haven't listened to it, it's always at the end of his podcast. And it's almost just as good to listen to than the normal podcast. And Echo Charles with his weak knees, skinny knees, also makes it good. Now, 3 of my call-outs, although a lot of them are really good. Number 12. What Made Jocko When to Quit, and The Forgotten Highlander. So that particular episode talks a little bit about how Jocko how he became the person he was when he learned to quit and not to quit. But they talk generally, and his podcasts are long, like 2 hours to 5 hours. One was 6 hours.
Yeah.
And if you haven't listened to the number 12, it is requirement if you're listening to this to go listen to number 12, because you will never complain again, or you will not want to complain. That story about the Forgotten Highlander is ridiculous. It is the most ridiculous story I've ever listened to. Just nuts. I can't do it justice to even explain it to you. So
what's the Highlander? So it's like a Scottish thing?
No. So I thought it was something to do with that. It was, that story called the Borneo River and the bridge over the Borneo River. No. Look, in essence, it's the story of, I believe, the Japanese. It was World War II. Okay. It was in Asia somewhere. Borneo, I think it was in Cambodia. Japanese took hostage of like a group of people, UK. So I think this individual was like from Scotland who was in UK, and he got involved in this. In essence, they, enslaved them through war, forced them to build this bridge over the Borneo River. And just the way that they got treated and stuff was just ridiculous. One particular point, like one of the highlights I remember reading was their flesh was being eaten away so quickly that they had to grab maggots off their shit and put it on their skin so they would stay alive, because the maggots would eat their skin and stop it from rotting. Stuff like that. It was just insanity. And then what happened beyond that when they were getting rescued, and like the amount of people that died and how he got through it was just intense. Hardcore. Insane. Number 155, it was with John Peterson about evil. Fantastic. One of the best really John Peterson things I've ever listened to. Great discussion. And then this is kind of like number 12 of the Forgotten Highlander. It's number 180 to number 182. And it is as action-packed as I've ever listened to a podcast, packed with sort of really good leadership tactics and that. It's very warfare. It's based on the Vietnam War. And it's a story of John Tilt Strykermeyer. And later, they talked to the Frenchman, which that's kind of his code name, a French guy. And it talks through the Vietnam SOG Chronicles, which is essentially, it was kind of like, it's a special forces in Vietnam. It was the first, the Navy SEALs were born out of Vietnam. These were the first special forces as well on the ground, but they had like an extra level called SOG. And I can't remember what that stands for. It's like Special Operation Ground Force, something like that.
Okay.
Now, these people, like, it was like top of the top of the top of the top, plus then you had to be like selected and some crazy. This guy, you had to resign that you were American. They were like, if you die or you get captured, we get to say that you didn't exist. You were no one. Like, no one will pick you up. No one will find you.
Yeah.
And the stories which he tells in there is just so many stories, are so insane. Like, it's unbelievable. You can't even picture this. Like, you were watching a movie. I think one of them was, he was coming into the L zone, which is the landing zone, and it was like getting dark, and they had to land to go and find something. And there were so many people shooting at them that in the Vietnam War, green traitors were good, red traitors were bad. Red traitors were the Vietnamese shot, I guess, in essence.
Yeah.
And there were so many people shooting at them with red traitors that because it was going through the helicopter that were coming in, and the inside of the helicopter was just completely red because there was so much tracer bullets of red going through, and just luckily not hitting him, but it was just like a field of red. So like that was insane. Another one was in a particular thing, I think it was like a group of 10 of them trying to get out of this area, and from afar they could hear the Vietnam like Congo, the Viet Congo coming at them, and could hear them chanting like his name, like, we're going to come and get you, we're going to come and kill you. And it was like 40,000 people against 10. And they got into this fight before they could get pulled up. And it was something around that they had, like, the amount of ammunition was like in the thousands. But they'd killed so many people that the Vietnamese were now using all the dead bodies as walls and having to climb over the walls of dead bodies to get at them. Jeez. And had to just keep piling them up. It was like, it is some of the most insane stories.
Yeah, I think.
And he just says them so kind of like with just very gentleness and humbleness. Oh, it's just couldn't give enough credit to those particular episodes.
Yeah,
good ones. Jocko Podcast. Listen to it. Good.
One I've got here, and this is a new one that I've started listening to, is Eric Weinstein.
Oh, yeah.
Don't know how to
Eric Weinstein.
I keep forgetting.
This is the mathematician, right?
Yeah. So he works with Peter Theo in whatever it is, his company.
An investment hedge fund.
Yeah.
Investment fund.
And one of the things I really like about it is he's got very wacky, like a very different way of looking at things than I do.
He's got his own way of looking at things.
And he's very, very smart as well.
Yep.
And almost like you can see him almost breaking down at times. Like he's one of those people who's so smart that you can sort of see like he's like one step away from going into like insanity or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
And he's definitely got some really deeply held like angst against the system, I guess, especially the academic system. I think he feels he's been treated very harshly by it. And whether that's true or not, I don't know his personal circumstances. But yeah, I don't have any standouts from that because it's only 20 episodes.
Okay, interesting. I might check that out. Checked one out of those.
Yeah, I suppose like that was one of the ones where I wouldn't say I particularly enjoyed it, but I feel like I'm learning a lot of how you can think about things differently.
Yeah, okay. Now I'll make that. I've been actually searching for an extra one to add into my list, so maybe the Eric Weinstein. I'll have a look.
Yeah.
My last one, pretty self-explanatory. Tony Robbins. He's got a podcast. Good. Should listen to it. It essentially gives you access to strategies and ways that he talks. Normally, it's like sort of cuts of existing conversations again that he has on stage or with people that turn into a podcast, and then some particular ones are podcast ones as well. 3 big ones that again he doesn't have numbers. I'd say why we do what we do. So him explaining the 6 human needs. Do you want to be happy? This was a really good one with Tony, Sage, and Michael Singer. So they talked about breaking patterns and finding inner peace. Really interesting discussion. And my other one was in pursuit of your why. So this was awesome because it's Tony and James Altucher, and they're talking about the importance of purpose and the tyranny of how, which is quite cool. So it was all about the question that every single person has to have a why, but not every single person's how will be the same. So it was really interesting because, we all, why do we want to be here? Because we want to be happy. So we might want, a lot of people can have the same reason as to why, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to have the same how. So how you make yourself happy is entirely different to how someone with a Ferrari might be happy. So it got into a really good discussion. It had a bit of science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. So that In the Pursuit of Your Why. Really good podcast from Tony. And the rest of them, they're fairly good. Again, it's one of those that you just pick up at random, and whichever seems good, you just go on and listen. And they're generally 20 to 40 minutes long. So not long ones either.
Cool.
So those are my top 5.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. I had some close ones, but there's more. I wouldn't say like there's anything revolutionary. No, not like a revelation. Revelationally. I'm not sure that's a word.
Is that a word? No.
Gary V. He's got to like see. It's not really a podcast.
Just thought about
it's
this.
Not,
I wouldn't say. I wouldn't even recommend his podcast, to be honest with you. I'd recommend his content in other platforms, like on YouTube.
Yeah. Because
they're not really podcasts.
Yeah.
They're more just a day in the life.
Yeah.
That I'd recommend. I wouldn't recommend all his talks, presentations.
Those are the ones I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Most of his other stuff is like,
I'd be picky on his episodes for sure. Like all of his current ones that are getting published, which are like the Daily Tea. It's really good only if you listen to it at the moment and you're kind of like doing something else. That's okay. But releasing to it, I tried listening to one just before, and I think 5 minutes of it, though, was kind of like mucking around, trying to set things up, and you're kind of like, well, it's not polished. Yeah. But it's also like, it's just, they're too long, like 2 hours, and you're not really taking away too much from it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Agreed. Aubrey Marcus, he's interesting if you want to get more into the
Marcus.
Woo. Someone who's done a lot of psychedelics. If you want to, want to see that, he's
Aubrey Marcus
to go to. Ruben Report. It's like, it's not really a podcast. It's not. It's like it's almost like a guy who wants to be on TV but who isn't.
Yeah.
And it's very political. That I can handle in small doses sometimes.
Like a little bit every now and again. Yeah. I know what you mean.
But no, I suppose. One which was an individual one that I really enjoyed was, and there's one where it's like, okay, it says it's a podcast, but I don't think it actually is.
Yeah.
Naval Ravikant.
He's awesome guy.
An interesting guy. Really interesting. Once again, the same sort of like angel investing, made a very, very wealthy dude.
Yep.
And he had a tweet storm that he did once. And so that's basically like a tweet, and then you reply to your own tweet, and it ends like being this massive thing. So you can end up writing a lot of stuff. And it was 3 hours or 4 hours where he just goes over this whole thing and explains like it's good because it's like principles of how to create wealth. So once again, it's not telling you where to put it. It's like his general way of thinking, which allowed him to get wealthy. So that was, and it was called the Naval podcast. I was like,
I'd actually recommend, if you want to get into Naval, currently on Instagram, he does live videos every day to discussing about a particular topic. Okay. And I listened to one of them and it was actually quite good.
Okay,
so
cool.
Him live on Instagram. Good.
One of the things I wanted to ask, like, what makes for a good episode? What makes for one that makes it into your individual list? Not as a whole, because we've sort of covered that, but like a really good episode.
I think a really good episode has to be one where, I think for me, I'm entertained. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm caught a hold of it.
That's like the bare minimum you need.
I'm learning from it. So it doesn't feel like even if it's like entertaining, but I do it listen for 2 hours and I come away with learning nothing. I'm like, oh, good, but kind of annoyed I didn't go and do something else that was a bit better. So I've got to be learning something from it. I don't really care about the ads, to be honest with you. Ads can be there, I'll just skip through. So it's not a thing for me. The topic, and it's got to be the right topic. So even though it's entertaining and I'm learning, I don't want to learn about like flour. The nicest flower that you can find. Like, I don't care if it's entertaining and you're really funny about it and it's learning about something. And I'm not going to do it because it's not my area that I'm really of interest of. So I'll give you an example. There's one about Tim Ferriss had a discussion with a guy who climbed El Capitan, which is the big...
Alex Honnold.
Yeah, Alex Honnold. And he's got the movie behind it. Now, Alex Honnold directed that movie and shot that movie as well because he's both a videographer, cinematographer, and a climber. And interesting... entertaining, learning, but I wasn't really, sold on the mountain climbing side of things. Like, I'm not really have that humongous interest in learning about it. And they talked a lot about that. So, they had all those particular qualities about it, I was like, this is not really for me. Another one's like Tim Ferriss is one of his absolutely best top podcasts. If you go on and find what's top podcast, he interviewed Jamie Foxx, and apparently it was like voted one of the top podcasts of the year, blah, 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 blah. I just wasn't as interested in that on Jamie Foxx, I guess. And so even though they talked about his life and a lot of really cool things, I was like, I don't really care. So I think it's got to also be, so the third thing is it's got to be of interest to me.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Cool.
You?
Interesting. I suppose like just looking at this list here, some of them are just pure entertainment. And I suppose with that particularly like making me laugh and just going, these people are so like just that laughing where it's 2 hours of just pretty much pure laughs.
Yeah. Okay.
Going, that's good. And some of them, I suppose, like it's almost like you get a feeling, or at least I do, where it feels like it captures your attention so deeply that whatever else you're doing sort of fades away. And so I'll be like stretching or whatnot, which is usually what I do when I'm listening to a podcast, and that sort of just fades away. Like it just doesn't become as important. Yep. And there'll be sometimes where I'll hear something and I'll stop stretching just to listen properly on that. Yeah. On that. So I suppose it's like something that captures your attention so deeply that you're willing to stop whatever it is that you're doing. Yep. To really like give it 100% of your focus. Yeah, I know. And what it is about that, which like makes you give 100% of your focus. I think that can be very context dependent. Yep. The time of day, how you're feeling, what sort of state you're in, where you're at in life, all those sorts of things. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I suppose that's the main thing. Fantastic. Good stuff. All right, very good. Those top podcasts and top episodes. So we'll list them all out, give them all a good bit of a whacking in there in the description. You can take a look. Yep. It's all good. Excellent. Fitness challenge. Mate, have you had any chance to do any of the fitness challenge and increase? I know you're a 44. Not even close. I'm on 33. I'm not even near close. I did get my best handstand, PB, 23 seconds. Yep. So I'm still 7 seconds away from the 30 seconds, but that's good. So we'll see. We'll see with that. Man. I've been noticing your handstands have been a little bit softer on the time side. Yeah, I'm gonna have to change something up to hit those to fix that up. Yep. Yeah, I suppose like the past couple of weeks just haven't been. It's clean, I guess, to be able to do them. I think I'm starting to feel the effect of the like not being able to do exactly what I work out, what I want to be doing, which is like gym stuff, rowing on the weekends, handstands during the week, and then like ring or bar work during the week as well. Got to get back into some sort of routine. But both like can't go to the gym and also can't use the pull-up bar because I'm gonna die. Which is coronavirus, mate. Coronavirus. Annoying, but good. I wish it was harder. Oh, I listened to an interesting discussion this morning about coronavirus. You would have enjoyed it. Yeah. Look, I must say, we're getting better at some of this video editing, audio editing. So if you want to see us getting better at it, I reckon people should check out YouTube. Yeah. Genuinely, go check it out. Like if you watch Jocko's podcasts, they're good, but the video editing is all right. Now, Echo Charles is okay at his editing. He's actually quite good. So we're going to start getting to that level. You might see this video will come out and it'll be a little bit better. So you should check it out. You should take a bit of a look. Leave it a bit of a comment. Do whatever. Good. Just check it out. Other platforms, go do it. Instagram seems to be quite fun, quite enjoyable. I know you're, Kyrin, been engaging quite a bit on the comments. People commenting back. I like it. So, all the socials were out there. Check them out. Just do it. Do it. Excellent. All right. That's all from me. Good. One out. Kyrin out.